personnel on school boards and school bonds and
Oh man.
funding measures. I mean, I don't see how anybody's going to get any sleep whatsoever on the night before election day.
Oh boy, oh boy. This is one I think this is the most controversial, and consequential election in our life.
It is. It is.
It is, it is. And I can't tell anybody who to vote for. I'm not gonna tell anybody who I voted for. But but I just put it like this: it wasn't red. Okay. Anyway, moving right along. I'm looking forward to a fantastic show as usual, my friend.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Brown, and welcome, listening audience. This is Ev James, your trusty tax reporter. Comes to you every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. for an hour or so, perhaps a little longer during election time. Uh, but we review tax changes, and I'm not really speaking for any organization, or certainly not I'm not an employee of IRS or anything. I'm just an observer who keeps track of changes you need to minimize your taxes and increase your refunds if that's possible. So, to begin with, we have only 6 more days until November 5, next Tuesday, for the national elections, and to include the local elections as well. The important thing is, at least from the Republican point of view, is to vote early before election day, and of course, the important thing for all voters is to make certain that you if you don't vote early, make certain that you at least vote, and make plans for it. Don't leave it up to the last moment, where the other was it unfor un I guess unforeseen events could interfere with your trip to the voting booth. But make plans for it, and make plans to take friends and acquaintances who need help in getting to the election booth. With that, let's take a quick look, number one, at the propositions. And this applies to just California voters, but I would urge our listeners to use some of your skills, mental skills, if you will, by applying some of the information that I'm going to provide to some of the other states that you live in, because certainly many of the things on the um, uh, California rolls, election rolls, will apply to other states also. To begin with, uh, we'll give you a quick rundown on our recommended actions on the propositions. Propositions, if you will, get a piece of paper. It might be very helpful, but many of the taxpayer protection organizations in the state of California are highly recommending that you vote yes on Proposition 5, Proposition 34, Proposition 35, and Proposition 36. um, and you're asking why? Well, on Proposition 2, that appears to be funding that is really for legitimate repairs to schools. They just simply have to be made to maintain minimal standards of education, educating our children. The next one is Proposition 34, which we're recommending a yes on in the state of California, and that's hopefully will stop the financial abuse of the drug discount program. Yes, also on Proposition 35, which stops the state from redirecting Medi-Cal funds to other purposes, and it protects the taxpayers as well. And then the last is a yes on Proposition 36, which is a highly touted proposition, which hopefully will at least make a dent in the crime statistics in our state. And it does hold criminals accountable, providing more legal redress for punishing repeat criminals, particularly in the retail theft area. Okay, those are the yeses. For the noes, the noes, the first no is Proposition 3, and and the reason is because that proposition would allow all kinds of things in the marriage area, not adhering to the traditional rules governing marriage, allowing people to literally marry animals and insects if they wish. So the recommendation there is a no on Proposition 3. The next one is number 4. That is truly a climate spending green boondoggle that probably would not duplicate, but at least try to mimic all of the green energy measures that have bankrupted this nation. So a no on Proposition 4, no on Proposition 5, which Proposition 5 is one of the biggest possible dangers to our financial stability. That lowers the voter threshold to pass these bonds. And of course, and it lowers that threshold, which is supposedly fixed in the state constitution that was passed back in 1879, believe it or not. But the original requirement, for passing these bond measures for local financial liabilities is 2/3, 66 and 2/3 of the votes. Well, now this Proposition 5 lowers that threshold that lowers that threshold all the way down, to a rate, that all the way down to 55%. So from 66 and 2/3% down to 55%. Wow. That obviously makes it a lot easier to pass these funding measures, and it will place debt on the local taxpayers that will never climb out of. So I would say out of all the propositions, probably the most the biggest danger to the financial stability of the government would come from propositions just like Proposition 5. So a no there. A no also on Proposition 6, because that bans mandatory work requirements in prison. And after all, if the person has been sentenced to a prison sentence, you would tend to think that that should include, as a minimum, a work requirement. So those are the also The next no is Proposition 32, because it would tend to just raise the cost of living and increase our overall inflation rate. That is because Proposition 2 mandates a statewide minimum wage increase. The last no is Proposition 33. And that Proposition 33, reason for that is Proposition 33 allows rent controls and allows new fees on single family home. Goodness, this as though we don't have a most difficult time enough on keeping fees down, on single family construction of single family homes. And what would happen if you're living in a community that allows the government to just simply set rent control standards at will? So there's a big no on Proposition 33. If I have time, I'll attempt to repeat those at the end of the program. But again, if you're taking notes, recommended yeses are on Proposition 2, 34, 35, and 36, and no on Propositions 3, 4, 5, 6, 32, and 33. 4 yeses and 6 no's. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, when the California voters and in whatever other states you're in, yeah, it's most likely you get a sticker shock when you find out what local governments are asking you to approve in new tax increases. In California, it's going to amount to $3.5 billion in tax increases, or $3.2 billion in tax increases, and $52 billion in new bond debt. Wow! For those, and this everything that I'm saying now will apply. In different figures, but at least the overall activity of raising your cost of living is going to apply to you no matter what state you live in. But in California, and for example, in Los Angeles, they might see local sales taxes reach 10.75% after November. And that would make Los Angeles one of the costliest places. It already is one of the costliest places to live and do business. And they are also one of the highest sales tax rates in the nation. According to the California Association of Realtors, the median price for a single-family home in the state reached $886,560 in July. 886,000 plus. And just to help drive this point home, this broadcaster bought his home, from which the weekly broadcasts are being projected. But I'll never forget. Those are figures you never forget. 100,000, 100, 100, 100,500 over, but $100,000 was the cost of the home that this broadcaster is broadcasting from. Just over 100,000, and now The median income for a single family home has gone up 8 times, at least. For a um, for the single family homes, it's gone up $800,000 for the type of home that I'm currently living in. So it's truly overwhelming. The economists estimate that the annual household income would need to be about $145,000 to even just afford the mortgage for a small starter home. That's a threshold that most residents in the state will never reach at any time in their lifetime. Unfortunately, the state is going just in the opposite direction by putting up more obstacles. Local bonds are on the ballot. These local bonds are actually doubling the cost of the house through all kinds of property tax increases on the homeowners and businesses. In some parts of the state, the cost to pay back these bonds can be thousands of dollars per property owner. That's annually for 30 years. Proposition 5 would lower the vote threshold, as I mentioned, for general obligation bonds from 2/3 to 55%, and that paves the way for higher property taxes. With all of these increases, the state and local officials really do need to reevaluate their goals and reevaluate the severity of what they're doing to the taxpayers in the state. So we're recommending that there's 2 important envelopes that you need to be ready to open. When reviewing your tax bill, the best place to start is to pull out last year's bill and make a side-by-side, a comparison. But in any case, these will be in the mail, and for most of you, statewide, at least in California, voters are being asked to approve more than 400 local tax and bond measures. On top of that, Propositions 2 and 4 are bond measures, each seeking $10 billion in additional indebtedness. Even worse, Proposition 5 would repeal the 2/3 vote for local bonds that I mentioned. That's been an important homeowner protection, since 1879. But approving that Proposition 5 would open the floodgates for higher property taxes, as even the California Legislative Analyst predicts that passage of Proposition 5 would lead to billions of tax burdens. As I mentioned, the passage of, in addition to all of this, the passage of Prop 5 will result in billions of dollars in future property taxes as well as current. And even worse, Proposition 5 is retroactive. So the lower vote threshold applies to several bond measures appearing on the November ballot. Voters who mistakenly believe that the 2/3 for local bonds will apply to local bond measures this election are in for a rude awakening if Prop 5 passes. Taxes will go up with just 55% of the vote going forward to all future elections. So Proposition 5 would allow virtually unlimited property taxes. Is there any good news in this at all? Well, keep in mind that the Proposition 5 comes in a very deceptive ballot label that fails to disclose that the vote threshold for local bonds is being lowered. Most voters have learned enough now not to be fooled on that. And according to recent polls, it's losing by a small margin. And this is consistent with the fact that most voters learn about proposition. The more they learn about it, the less likely they are to support it. That's the good news. The bad news is that the tax and spend advocates have just dropped millions of dollars to push that 5 over the finish line. Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg and his wife have contributed nearly half of the promotional funds for this. Of course, the Zuckerbergs are two of the wealthiest people on the planet, so property taxes are not that important to them. But the same cannot be said of ordinary taxpayers who struggle to hold on to their homes. So they keep Proposition 5 in mind, but only to the point of opposing it with your vote when you get the election material in the mail. It's while we're speaking about housing, it is interesting that in the current national election, Harris and Trump both pushed different housing plans. Many of those, of course, you hear of the politicians promote a particular plan, but many of those would still need the federal Congress's okay. Millions of folks certainly cannot afford to buy a home or rent a suitable apartment now. That's really, one of the major issues in the campaign. The single biggest reason home ownership is out of reach for so many is that there just really aren't nearly enough homes for sale to balance out the market between buyers and sellers. The shortfall, which some economists say ranges from 1 million to around 4 million homes, has for the better part of the past decade fueled the bidding wars that increased the median sales price, to an all-time high this past June of $426,000 in June, this past June. Higher mortgage rates have also kept many home shoppers on the sidelines. The average rate of a 30-year mortgage rose to nearly 8% last year and now sits at 6.44%. So renters have not had it any easier. The renting remains roughly 20% higher than it was before the pandemic. They've both Harris and Trump have put out proposals that they contend will make the American dream accessible to more Americans. Harris has laid out a detailed roadmap of policies aimed at expanding access to affordable housing, both for home buyers and renters. And that includes, from the Harris camp, first-time offerings of $25,000 in down payment assistance, and tax incentives for builders and federal funds for cities to speed up construction. She says her plan will add 3 million more housing units over the next 4 years. Trump says he will create tax incentives for home buyers to cut the unnecessary regulations on home construction and make some federal land available for residential construction. He also said hopes to lower the housing costs by reducing inflation and stopping illegal immigration. Setting aside the fact that many of the candidates' policies would require support from the federal Congress, some economists say the campaign platforms offer some good ideas, but there's really no sure fix to the housing market's long-standing challenges. What are some of the ideas? Well, given our limitation in time, I'll give you some of them. Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. He's suggesting that mass deportations will ease the demand for homes, thus making sure that housing is more available. Some folks from the home building industry said deportations could make the supply problem actually worse, however, because a third of the home building industry's labor force is foreign born. Let me repeat that. Some folks believe that supply problem could actually get worse because so many people who are actually building the homes are from other nations. The most pressing part is wages and incomes really aren't high enough to cover rental costs. And that really doesn't have anything to do with undocumented people. From some quarters of the evaluators' recommendations. Let's take a look at Harris's $25,000 down payment plan, where she does hope to directly help home shoppers by providing up to that $25,000 in down payment assistance. However, like Trump's plan, Harris's plan could backfire in a way. Economists warn that introducing a buyer incentive when the supply of homes for the sale remains tight in many markets, that could juice the prices, and that could make home ownership less affordable. The income could depend on the particular market. In Los Angeles, a $25,000 down payment is hardly enough. But there again, in other areas, it's enough in Detroit, but certainly not in Los Angeles. So it cuts both ways. Trump has pledged to tackle zoning and other construction regulations in order to accelerate the housing production. Really, although his platform really doesn't go into a lot of detail. Harris is proposing a $40 billion fund to spur local governments, which control zoning laws, and is hoping that her plans hope to streamline their regulations in order to cut down on the time it takes for builders to get projects cleared and completed. But there's one caveat. State and local governments have to show that they're actually building housing that is affordable. Both candidates have also said, although very vaguely, that they're in favor of making limited portions or certain portions of federal land available for home construction. So that battle will go on as we move into the highly debated election coming up. Next Tuesday, November 5th. So, folks, we've been talking about some of the initiatives and funding measures on the ballot, and as I mentioned earlier, all of those that I have mentioned, if you just use a little imagination, are probably very similar to funding requests in your individual states and individual localities. So the the important one that I think we just highlighted is Proposition 5, which is the threshold change measure, dropping the approval, from 66 and two-thirds percentage of the legitimate electors down to 55%, which will make it easier to pass and more likely that it's going to place an additional burden on the taxpayers, of the individual states. Okay, I think that if you have any questions, we are urging you to send all questions or comments to the this podcast broadcasting station. To do so, you can either call or email the broadcaster, Edward James, at 951 522 9877. Again, 951 522 9877. And for those who are more disposed to using the internet, evjtax1 at gmail.com. That's evjtax1 at gmail.com. Okay, let's take a look at what is going to be happening. Tremendous importance this coming year, 2025, because at the end of 2025, the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, while Trump was in office, that is all of those benefits, tax benefits, are going to officially expire at the end. Not all of those benefits, but a good number of those benefits are going to expire at the end of 2025, which is just this next year. And if nothing is done to renew it legally, all of those benefits, which included lower federal income taxes for individual taxpayers. It included higher standard deductions. It included bigger lifetime estate and gift tax exemptions. Unless lawmakers act to extend those provisions, folks, that the tax law will simply revert to the rules that were in effect for 2017, which means obviously your taxes are going to go up. So if Trump wins, he definitely is going to need Congress's help, because it will be a lot easier to pass big tax changes desired by a candidate if after the election one party controls the presidency and both houses of Congress. However, if on the other hand he does not win and Kamala Harris wins, there's going to be a lot of compromise that's going to be needed, as there will be divided government next January. Whoever the president is will also have to deal with the huge federal debt, decades of deficit spending. It just added up to a monstrosity, a national debt of nearly 36 trillion with a T. Politicians might consider using the upcoming 2025 tax debate to lower the debt. But this is not going to be easy. The cost of extending all or just some of the expiring tax breaks will be expensive. And that doesn't include the cost of new proposed tax cuts. And it does not include the cost, if Trump wins, of deporting the what some people estimate to be over 20 million persons who do not have legal status in this country. Just that effort alone is going to be absolutely financially monstrous. The so there's going to be just a huge tax debate this coming year, not only to lower the debt, but to pay for all of this deficit spending that the current government has brought on the American people by importing all of these persons who are many of whom are becoming dependent on the state for support. So it would be interesting to see what Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have on their tax wish lists. Well, as far as individual income tax rates are concerned, Trump, of course, wants the 2017 tax law made permanent, and he's expressed that many times. And he actually desires even lower income tax rates for individuals. Well, of course, on the other side, with the lower income tax rates, of course, that means less taxes to pay for the tax obligations, and debt obligations we already have. And that means that will likely increase the deficit if less money is coming in from the tax revenue. So as far as individual tax rates, Trump wants lower income tax rates. Right now, we don't have any details from his campaign, such as whether he'd reduce the current 37% tax rate. As you know, the former tax rate was 39.6%, but it was reduced to 37% through the 2017 tax law changes. Harris, however, is sticking with President Biden's pledge that people making less than $400,000, you've heard her talk about that, in a year will not pay more in federal taxes. Well, we take this to mean that she would support extending the tax break in the 2017 law to people earning less than $400,000, which are most taxpayers. However, folks, for you who are receiving more than $400,000 in income, you would wind up paying more if Harris gets her way. She proposes to bring back the 39.6% top income tax rate and then increase the 3.8% net investment tax to 5% for people making 400,000 or more. And that 400,000 figure is likely to be just the same for singles, joint filers, and heads of households. Well, okay, so that's the tax rates. What about capital gains? Well, there's a lot of rumors out there that Donald Trump supports a 15% top tax rate on long-term capital gain. And that would be a reduction of that long-term capital gain. Right now, the top capital gain rate is 20%. But, he hasn't really confirmed that. Harris, on the other hand, would raise the 20% long-term capital gains tax rate to 28% to the extent taxable income exceeds $1 million. So Trump would be pushing that reduction to 15% top rate, capital gains rate, versus Harris, who would raise it to 28%. by the amount, of course, that your income exceeds $1 million. Now, similar to Biden, Harris may want to treat death as a realization event for income tax purposes. That's when a deemed taxable sale takes place of a decedent's capital assets at fair market value, with capital gains and losses reported on the final income tax return. And that's with her proposals with the $5 million lifetime gain exclusion. Harris's most controversial proposal, however, is one that would affect the fewest taxpayers. She backs a 25% minimum tax on people with at least $100 million in wealth. So she's would be looking to increase the tax load on folks who are in the higher income bracket, whereas Trump is looking to reduce the tax load on folks. So this would really be, but she would be primarily impacting, her changes would be primarily impacting the higher income folks. The biggest takeaway here is that the tax that she backs, that Kamala Harris backs, would hit taxable income plus unrealized capital gains. And that unrealized capital gains has been discussed a lot. That means the gain on appreciated assets that the individual has not yet sold or disposed of. That's the biggest. That's the biggest objection of folks who are on the Republican side of the aisle. They vehemently oppose being taxed on gains that on your appreciated assets that you haven't as yet disposed of or sold. What about state and local tax deductions? Well, presently, if you itemize, and for folks who have itemized for literally decades now, for those who itemize on Schedule A, currently you can deduct your state and local income taxes, but per the 2017 tax changes under Trump, you can only deduct those state and local income taxes up to $10,000. That's the cap or limitation, you might say. After 2025, however, if indeed they would, if that is taken away, if they change it, the law, they would again generally be able to write off the full amount as they had prior to 2018. But in order to do that, they would have to change the law, change that 2017 law to remove that $10,000 limitation. Trump has actually floated the idea of eliminating that $10,000 limitation, but we really don't know how serious the idea is from the Trump camp, given that the item was originally enacted in his 2017 tax reform law. So far, Harris has stayed silent. Yeah, but it's very likely that she's going to get a lot of pressure from congressional Democrats from high tax states like New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, California. She's going to. There's a lot of congressional Democrats who are really clamoring for full deductibility of the SALT or deductions, the state and local income taxes. What about child tax credit? That's one of the major areas of recommendations and proposals. And currently, it's $2,000 per child. that if, however, and that's per the 2017 the tax increase in that tax credit under Trump, but that 2,000 per child credit will drop to $1,000 after 2025 if lawmakers do not act. As I say, if they do not act, otherwise it just goes back to $1,000 if there's no agreement or no passage of that kind of a change. Trump supports J.D. Vance's idea to give parents a higher child tax credit of $5,000 per child. So that child tax credit has truly been, just almost like used as or viewed as a panacea, really from both sides of the aisle. Both are loading up on that child tax credit. Harris also wants to see more tax breaks for parents. She promises to bring back the 2021 expansions to the child tax credit. She wants to bring back that $3,600 per child tax credit with breaking it down to monthly payments and full refundability. And I'm sure that's to assist families who have a lower income to handle all their monthly liabilities and payments. And she also wants to give new parents a one-time child tax credit of $6,000 to be claimed on the parent's tax return for the first year of the child's life. So as I say, that's this broadcaster would almost guarantee that because of the inevitable hostility of the two parties after the election, that because of that, there's not going to be too many areas where they can actually come to an agreement. And probably one of those areas, it has been in the past, has been that child tax credit, and probably that's going to be the same case this coming year. There's some other income tax breaks that have been discussed by the two candidates for president. Trump has promised lots and lots of tax breaks on his campaign trail and social media. Some ideas that you've heard about. He wants to remove the taxes on tips. He wants to remove taxes on Social Security benefits and remove taxes on overtime pay. Wow. Well, it's one of the things that this broadcaster certainly would disagree with him on, and that is removing that tax on Social Security benefit, even though it hurts this broadcaster as well as other people, or many other people who their Social Security benefits are being taxed. Yeah, granted, it's would really be great to not to have to pay that tax, but the reality is that what the tax is what's going to help keep the Social Security trust fund afloat and out of bankruptcy, out of danger. That's one of the and that represents a lot of money that is coming in to help keep the trust fund from going bust. Trump has floated a tax credit that would be for people in disaster areas who buy generators, and then also a Schedule A tax deduction for interest that people pay on their car loans. Remember that used to be in the law? Wow. And most people who work and have families have to have a vehicle or have to have transportation. And that not only includes employees, but folks who have their own businesses who are in the self-employed industry, who are earning money on the side, through a job in addition to their employee W-4 income. Trump also wants tax changes for Americans living overseas. And he would even think about tax breaks for the military, police officers, and firefighters. I think a lot of people would be, even though they would question that in view of the mistreatment that particularly police officers have received over the past few years. Many people would approve of a tax break for police officers in view of what they've had to suffer just carrying out their jobs. However, there are a lot of folks a lot of experts that do say that most of Trump's proposed tax giveaways, unfortunately, in this political climate, would be an absolute non-starter. Particularly if he wins, and you're thinking about all of that anger, that the other side will be wanting to express because of his success. Well, Kamala Harris vows to extend the expansion to the Obamacare subsidies that would allow more people without affordable workplace health coverage to get tax credits for just buying insurance through the marketplace. That's through the Obamacare program. Keep in mind that absent any action, the Obamacare expansions will end after 2025. And I would almost guarantee, I put money on forecasting that the Obamacare expansions will probably be renewed just in return for some, for some willingness from the other side to agree to some of their to a consensus. I would almost see that will be one of the one of the chips that will be used to negotiate with the Democratic side of the aisle. Kamala, she's also has mentioned that she might be agreeable to a tax-free tip income, but she would target that break to only service workers and hospitality workers. In addition, Kamala would also let childless workers claim a higher earned income credit as they have been able to do in 2021. As far as a corporate income tax rate future, it's really important to note that the tax rate on C corporations that was enacted in the 2017 tax law, this is not one of the provisions that is scheduled to expire after 2025. So keep that in mind. That's not one of those ones that is going to has to have legislative action. But the candidates are still talking about it. He's talked about cutting that 21% corporate rate for C corporations. He's talking about cutting that by a percentage point down to 20%. And he would even lower it to 15% if the C corporations make their products in the United States. That's going to be a huge part of the expectation from the Republican side of the aisle, is insisting that our manufacturing industry return to plentiful goods that are actually made here in this country, as opposed to buying it from other countries. But Harris, of course, is not, doesn't seem to be in the camp of the C corporation population, and she would actually raise that corporate tax rate to 28%. Wow. The what about business taxes? Well, the Trump would revive the 100% first year bonus depreciation and allow more asset expensing. And that would allow businesses to claim the research and development tax breaks in the year that the expenses are incurred. I mean, that would be a huge change, because right now the firms have to amortize their research and development costs over 5 years. And wow, would it be a break for if they could do that first year depreciation all in 1 year. Trump backs 10 or 20% across the board tariffs on imported goods and a 60% tariffs on goods from China. I would guess that if he is elected, that he'll probably be willing to, in order to get some other concessions from the other side, he probably would be willing to reduce that really onerous tariff rather on China, perhaps is in return for a peace in the foreseeable future with China. And he would trash most of the clean energy credits in the Inflation Reduction Act. But I would suspect that in order to get some concessions from the other side, if he wins, he might be willing to go along with some of the green energy credits. But there would definitely be some major reductions in funding the green energy initiatives. The Harris would let startup firms deduct up to $50,000 of pre-opening costs, and that would, I would imagine, that might even be extended to the gig economy, as we call it, the previously off the books hidden economy of folks who have a regular full-time job getting full-time pay, and then on the side getting involved in a gig or self-employment situation. But that would let if Harris wins, that would allow a huge explosion of the new economy, gig economy, over and above all of the increases just over the past 2 to 3 years. Kamala also wants a new credit for builders who sell starter homes to first-time home buyers, and she'd increase the existing tax incentive for builders of affordable rental units. I would think that would be something that both parties, both Democratic and Republican Party, would be agreeable to. The corporations, that do come into existence will need to really check the changes that might occur that might help them survive those initial years of opening their doors. Okay, so the another major change in the business area, as I mentioned, he would revive that 100% first year bonus depreciation and allow a lot more depreciation to take place. We might just announce to all Social Security beneficiaries that wow, you may or may not know that we're all going to get a 2.5% increase in the benefit for 2025. And folks who reach full retirement age in 2025 will not lose any benefits if they earn less than $62,000 or less before reaching that retirement age. If you folks who are younger than full retirement age can make up to $23,400 before they start to lose benefits. There is no earnings cap, no earnings limitation once you reach the full retirement age. And again, for folks who receive Social Security, we're all going to get a benefit as of January 1, 2025, just a few months away. We're all going to get an increase of 2.5%. And the earnings test, if you're still working, as many people are, at that retirement age, at your full retirement age, if you reach full retirement age, you won't lose any benefits if you earn less than 62,000 before reaching that full retirement age. As I say, people younger than full retirement age can make up to 23,400 before they start to lose benefits. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have reached full retirement age, you can work as much as you want. There's no earnings limitation. It's interesting to know that the Social Security wage base, that is the wages that Social Security taxes are applied to, that rises in 2025, this next year, to $176,100. That's a $7,500 increase. The Social Security tax rate on employers and employees still stands pat at, that hasn't been changed. That still stands pat at 6.2%. Both employers and employees continue to pay the 1.45% Medicare tax on all compensation with no limitations. People who are self-employed will pay 12.4% Social Security tax on self-employment earnings up to the limitation, and 2.9% Medicare tax on total self-employment earnings. So those are some of those tax arrangements that still stay in place. There are some other areas that I'll just highlight before the end of the program. One is gambling. IRS really does need to do a better job enforcing the tax rules. But keep in mind, folks, all gambling winnings are taxable. Casinos and the like, they have to file Form W-2G with IRS for winnings. So if you get winnings of $1,200 or more in bingo or slots, you're required to file a Form W-2G. 1,200 over winnings of 1,200 or more in bingo or slots. If you have winnings of $1,500 or more in Keno, or over $5,000 in poker tournaments, you have to file a W-2G to IRS. Even online sporting betting sites should file the W-2G for winnings over $600. And so most people report their winnings on Schedule 1 of the 1040. Losses are deductible if you itemize on Schedule A, but keep in mind that you can't just deduct all of your losses. You can only deduct your losses on that Schedule 1 and on the Schedule A. You can only deduct those losses up to the amount of your winnings. So, and if you are in a net loss situation, you cannot deduct all those losses. It's only the losses up to the amount of the winning. There have been many reports that IRS letting too many unreported gambling income fall through the cracks. Just to give you an idea, up to $13 billion from taxpayers who were issued W-2Gs showed winnings of over $15,000, but who did not file for their income tax returns reporting that income. That's per Treasury inspectors. IRS will begin enforcement against some of these non-filers for the 2018-20 tax years. And also, IRS is also expanding the wagering codes on the W-2Gs to include a code for sports betting, which has really taken a big increase in activity over the past few years. And they're doing that to hike donations. Okay, with the time we have left, what about donations? Keep in mind, you can only get a deduction to an IRS-recognized tax-exempt organization. Watch out for bonus charities and solicitors. The scammers have two aims: steal your money and get you to divulge that personal and financial information. And with the last, keep receipts of your deductions and follow the rules. Retain canceled checks, credit card receipts, and thank you letters from the donee. Get a contemporaneous written acknowledgement from the donee for gifts of $250 or more. Attach Form 8283 for non-cash charitable donations that are valued over $500. And last but not least, get a written appraisal for property donations that are valued at more than $5,000. And with that, we will wrap it up for this week. And folks, the next time we talk, we hopefully may have the name for our new president, which will be next Wednesday, and vote next Tuesday, November the 5th.
All right. Hey, but before you go, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm a gambler. I'm a heavy gambler, and I'm a bad one at that, and I lose. I've lost a ton of money, and I haven't won anything. So what you're saying is that I can only file my losses up to the amount that I've won.
That's correct.
So if I haven't won anything, then
you can't deduct.
You cannot.
Cannot.
Whoa.
You cannot. In other words, you're not allowed to deduct your losses, my man. And so if you're a net total loser, you ain't gonna deduct nothing.
Oh man.
And don't do it, man, because they'll kill you on the audit.
Look at one real quick story. I remember I was working for a major corporation, and one of my agents was a heavy gambler.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. And he lost one time in Vegas $30,000.
You're kidding.
No. I felt bad for him.
You're right. And he can't. And if he lost all that, he can't deduct that. And if he's a heavy gambler, he's likely to have been audited to be, by IRS.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Very fascinating show, El.
Okay.
Good information as usual, my friend.
Okay.
Okay, buddy. Enjoy your Wednesday, folks. This has been The World on Finance with Everett James. I hate to laugh at somebody else's
that's right.
Bad luck, but
that's why I had to repeat that.
Man, that's funny. Yeah, not for him. Good gracious.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, wow, wow.
I'm sure there are people in the audience who've been deducting their losses for years and praying that they don't hear from IRS.
Oh boy. Oh, well, I wasn't one of them. All right, thank God. Okay, my friend. Hey, stay
Okay.
tuned for tonight. We have Cultural Excellence with yours truly. There, I'll be just spending some great, great music, having a great time. So kick back, grab a glass. And next week, don't forget to tune into the World on Finance with your tax professional, Mr. Everett James.
Thank you.
Enjoy your Wednesday. Thank you,
You.
my friend.
Thank you.
Keep what you got until you get what you need, y'all.